I should have known the moment his eyes found me across the gallery that my life was about to change. The champagne flute in my hand trembled slightly as I stood near the marble column, trying to look like I belonged at an art exhibition this lavish. My best friend Sophia had dragged me here, insisting I needed to live a little after months of drowning in graduate coursework and part-time shifts at the campus library. The black dress I wore was borrowed from her closet, sleek, fitted, with a neckline that dipped lower than anything I'd ever worn before. "Stop tugging at it," Sophia whispered, swatting my hand away from where I'd been adjusting the fabric. "You look incredible." I didn't feel incredible. I felt exposed. The gallery hummed with conversation, the kind of polished small talk that came naturally to people who owned original Monets and summered in the Amalfi Coast. I was a scholarship student from Brooklyn who still clipped grocery coupons. I didn't belong here. That's when I felt the weight of someone's attention, heavy and absolute. I turned my head and found him. He stood near the far wall, surrounded by men in expensive suits, but he wasn't looking at them. He was looking at me, tall, dark-haired, with the kind of face that belonged on Renaissance sculptures, all sharp angles and carved intensity. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, and even from across the room, I could see the calculation in his dark eyes. My breath caught. He didn't smile, didn't look away, just watched me like I was the only thing in the room worth his attention. "Who is that?" I breathed. Sophia followed my gaze and her face went pale. "That's Dante Moretti." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Elena, we need to go." "Why?" "Because that man is dangerous." She gripped my arm. "His family owns half the city. The other half is too scared to tell him no." Before I could process her words, he was moving. Not toward me, that would come later, but to the exit, flanked by two men who moved like shadows. He paused at the doorway, glanced back once, and our eyes met again. Then he was gone. I told myself to forget about him. Told myself it was nothing. But 3 days later, standing outside my apartment building with grocery bags cutting into my palms, I saw the black car idling at the curb. The back window rolled down, and there he was, Dante Moretti, in my neighborhood, outside my building. "Get in," he said. "Not a request. I don't even know you. You're wearing that dress again." I looked down, confused. I was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater. "I'm not. Not now. But you will be." His jaw tightened. "Tomorrow night, the mayor's charity gala. Your friend already RSVP'd for both of you. How did he know that?" "I'm warning you, Elena." My name and his voice sent shivers down my spine. "If you wear that dress again, there will be consequences." "Are you threatening me?" Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, but something darker, more complicated. "I'm protecting you. You just don't know from what yet." The window rolled up. The car pulled away. I stood on the sidewalk, heart hammering, groceries forgotten. I should have been terrified, should have called the police. Instead, all I could think about was the way he'd said my name. The next night, I wore the dress. I told myself it was defiance, that I wouldn't let some stranger dictate my choices. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, I knew the truth. I wanted to see what would happen. The gala was held at the plaza, all glittering chandeliers and old money. Sophia stayed close, her earlier warnings replaced by nervous energy. "If he approaches you, just be polite and walk away. These people don't play by normal rules." But I couldn't walk away. Because the moment I stepped into the ballroom, I felt him. That same heavy attention, like gravity shifting in my direction. He was across the room again, this time in a tuxedo that made him look like he owned the world. And maybe he did. Men deferred to him. Women watched him with careful hunger, but his eyes were only on me, on the dress. His expression was unreadable, but his hands resting on the bar were white-knuckled. Then he moved. This time, he didn't stop until he was standing directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne cedar and something darker, like smoke. I warned you, he said quietly. I don't take orders from strangers. I'm not a stranger anymore. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. And you're leaving. Now, I'm not going anywhere with you. His hand closed around my wrist, not painful but absolute. Yes, you are. Because in approximately 90 seconds, Viktor Kozlov is going to walk through that door. And when he sees you in that dress, he's going to assume you're here for him. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You need to trust me. I should have pulled away, should have screamed. But something in his voice, something raw and urgent beneath the command, made me hesitate. Who's Viktor Kozlov? Dante's eyes darkened. The man who killed the last woman, who wore a dress like that to one of his events. The room tilted. Before I could respond, the ballroom doors opened. A man entered, Holder, silver-haired with cold eyes that swept the room like a predator searching for prey. Those eyes landed on me, and suddenly Dante's hand was on the small of my back, guiding me toward a side exit with the kind of practiced efficiency that spoke of violence and escape routes memorized long ago. Walk, he murmured. Don't look back. I walked. Behind us, I heard a voice call out in accented English, Moretti, leaving so soon? Dante didn't answer, didn't slow down, just kept moving until we were in a service corridor, then out a back entrance, then inside another black car that appeared like magic. The door slammed. The car moved. I was shaking. What just happened? My voice broke. Dante stared out the window, his jaw tight. You wore the dress. You said you were protecting me. From what? He finally looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than control in his expression. Something that looked almost like fear, from becoming collateral damage in a war you don't even know you're standing in the middle of. The car drove through rain-slicked streets, and I sat there in my borrowed dress, realizing that my life had just shattered into something I couldn't recognize. And the man beside me, this dangerous, beautiful stranger, was the only thing standing between me and something worse. I just didn't know yet that he was also the most dangerous thing of all. The car didn't take me home. I realized this somewhere around 42nd Street when we turned away from Brooklyn and headed deeper into Manhattan, toward neighborhoods where buildings didn't have numbers anymore. Just names, history, and security cameras that cost more than my yearly tuition. Where are we going? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Dante hadn't looked at me since we left the plaza. He sat perfectly still, one hand resting on his knee, the other holding his phone as messages lit up the screen in rapid succession. Each one made his expression harder. Somewhere safe, he said finally. My apartment is safe. Your apartment is compromised. The words sent ice through my veins. What does that mean? He turned to me then, and I saw the calculation behind his eyes, weighing how much truth I could handle, how much would break me. It means Viktor Kozlov now knows your face, your name, and by morning he'll know everywhere you've ever been. Your apartment isn't safe. Your campus isn't safe. Nowhere you've ever been is safe. Because of a dress? Because of what the dress represents. He leaned forward slightly, and the space between us felt charged. 3 months ago, Kozlov's mistress wore a nearly identical dress to a fundraiser. She disappeared that night. 2 weeks later, she washed up in the Hudson. My stomach turned. Why? Because she was passing information to my family. And Kozlov doesn't forgive betrayal. His eyes held mine. When he saw you tonight in that dress, he assumed you were a message for me, a replacement, a taunt. But I don't even know you. It doesn't matter what's true, it matters what he thinks. The car turned down a private drive flanked by iron gates, and right now, he thinks you're mine. The word hung in the air between us. Mine. The gates opened. The car stopped in front of a brownstone that looked like it belonged in a period drama, all pristine stone and gaslight-style lamps casting golden pools on the steps. You're staying here tonight, Dante said, already opening the door. I have class tomorrow. You're not going to class. Anger flared through my fear. You can't just kidnap me because of some misunderstanding. His hand caught my chin, gentle but firm, tilting my face up to his. The touch sent electricity down my spine. Listen to me very carefully, Elena. His voice was soft, deadly. Viktor Kozlov has already sent men to your apartment. If you'd gone home tonight, you'd be in the back of a van heading to a warehouse in Queens right now. So no, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is me keeping you alive. His thumb brushed my jawline barely, almost accidentally, and my breath caught. He noticed. Something flickered in his expression. Then he released me and stepped back, creating distance like it took effort. Come inside. The townhouse was beautiful in the way museums were beautiful, all dark wood, expensive art, and the kind of silence that spoke of wealth and isolation. A woman in her 50s appeared, nodded at Dante, and disappeared upstairs with instructions I didn't hear. I stood in the foyer, still wearing the cursed dress, and tried to process that my life had turned into something unrecognizable in the span of 3 days. You'll stay on the 3rd floor, Dante said, shrugging off his tuxedo jacket. Beneath it, his white shirt was crisp, perfect. Maria will bring you anything you need. Don't leave the house. Don't call anyone. Don't exist. I snapped, fear turning into anger. You can't just lock me away. I can. And I will. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch from a crystal decanter. Until I fix this. How? By making it clear to Kozlov that you're not involved in my business. That you're nobody. The word stung more than it should have. I am nobody, I said quietly. Dante's hand tightened on the glass. Then this should be easy. But the way he said it, the edge in his voice made me think it wouldn't be easy at all. I didn't sleep. The 3rd floor bedroom was larger than my entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed and windows overlooking a private garden. Maria had left silk pajamas on the bed and removed the black dress like it was contaminated. Maybe it was. I stood at the window and watched the garden, trying to make sense of everything. A man I didn't know had pulled me into a world I didn't understand, and now my freedom was gone because of something as simple as fabric and neckline. I should have been terrified. I was terrified, but I was also, and I hated myself for this, curious. About him. About this world. About the way he'd looked at me when his thumb brushed my jaw. Like I was something fragile, like I was something precious, like I was something his. I found him just after 2 in the morning. I'd gone downstairs looking for water and found him instead, sitting in a study lined with books, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, papers spread across the desk in front of him. He looked up when I appeared in the doorway, and for just a moment I saw exhaustion flicker across his face before the mask returned. Can't sleep? He asked. Can you? A ghost of something that might have been a smile. No. I stepped inside, pulling the silk robe tighter around me. Is this what your life is like? Constant danger? Always looking over your shoulder? Yes. The simplicity of the answer was somehow worse than elaboration would have been. Then why do you do it? I moved closer to the desk. Why live like this? He studied me for a long moment. Because it's the only life I've ever known. My father ran this family. His father before him. I was born into the cage, Elena. I didn't choose it. But you could leave. No. His voice turned hard. I couldn't. Because the moment I leave, everything I built, everyone I protect, it all falls apart. There are 50 families who depend on the stability my presence provides. Hundreds of businesses. Thousands of lives. That's not your responsibility. It became my responsibility the moment my father died and left me his empire. He stood, moving around the desk toward me. You think I want this? The violence? The constant calculation? Never knowing who to trust? He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. I don't want it, he said quietly, but I'm good at it, and that matters more than wanting. I saw it then, the loneliness, the weight, the cage he'd mentioned. Without thinking, I reached out and touched his hand where it rested on the desk. He went completely still. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what happened to you, for the life you didn't choose. Something broke behind his eyes. Just for a second. Just enough for me to see the man beneath the monster. Then he stepped back, severing the contact. Go to bed, Elena. Dante, go. The command was gentle but absolute. I went, but as I climbed the stairs, I glanced back and saw him standing in the doorway of his study, watching me with an expression I couldn't name. Like he was already regretting letting me get close, like he was already falling. I woke to find a new wardrobe in my room. Not just my clothes, jeans, sweaters, even my battered copy of Jane Eyre from my nightstand. Someone had been to my apartment and brought back pieces of my life, carefully selected. And now they sat in the guest room closet like they belonged there. Like I belonged there. Maria appeared with breakfast coffee, pastries, fresh fruit arranged on porcelain. "Mr. Moretti thought you'd be more comfortable with familiar things," she said, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "Where is he?" "Dealing with business." Her expression softened slightly. "He left instructions that you're to have anything you need. Books, laptop, anything to keep you occupied." Occupied. Like I was a child who needed distraction. After she left, I dressed in my own jeans and sweater, small rebellion against the silk prison, and explored the townhouse. 3 floors of old wealth and new security. I counted 4 cameras, 2 panic buttons, and windows with glass too thick to be normal. This wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. Dante returned just after noon. I heard the front door, the low murmur of voices, then his footsteps on the stairs. He found me in the library on the 2nd floor, surrounded by first editions and afternoon light. "You went to my apartment," I said without looking up from the book I wasn't actually reading. "I sent someone to your apartment," he corrected. "There's a difference." Did they find anything? Proof that someone was watching me? His silence was answer enough. I finally looked at him. He'd changed into dark slacks and a black Henley that made him look less like a businessman and more like the dangerous thing he actually was. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Bad enough." He moved to the window, checking the street below with practiced efficiency. "Kozlov has eyes everywhere. Your building super was on his payroll. So was a student in your Monday lecture." My blood went cold. "Someone I know? Someone you sat next to 3 times this semester." I thought of all the faces in my Gothic literature class, trying to match them to Betrayal. "Why?" My voice cracked. "Why would someone I've never hurt? For money? For fear? For 100 reasons that have nothing to do with you personally?" He turned back to me, and his expression was harder now. "This is the world I exist in, Elena. Everyone is a potential asset or a potential threat. Trust is currency, and it's always in short supply. That sounds exhausting." "It is." I stood, setting the book aside. "So what happens now? I just stay here forever? Prisoner in a pretty cage. You're not a prisoner. Then let me leave." "No." The word was flat, absolute. Anger surged. "You can't just keep me here." "I can. And I will. Until I'm certain Kozlov understands you're not involved." He moved closer, and I hated how my body reacted, pulse quickening, breath shallow. "Do you understand what he would do to you if he got his hands on you? The things he'd do to extract information you don't even have? You said you'd fix this. I'm trying to fix this. But these things take time. Negotiation, proof." His jaw tightened. "And in the meantime, you stay where I can protect you." "I don't need your protection. I need my life back." Something flickered across his face, frustration, anger, something else I couldn't identify. "Your life back?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Your life ended the moment you walked into that gallery wearing that dress, the moment Viktor Kozlov decided you meant something to me." "But I don't mean anything to you. You said it yourself, I'm nobody." I lied. The words hung between us like a confession. My heart stopped. "What?" Dante's expression shattered immediately, like he'd revealed too much. "You're not nobody, not anymore. The moment I pulled you out of that gala, I made you somebody. I made you mine in his eyes. And now I have to deal with the consequences." There it was again. Mine. "I didn't ask for this," I whispered. "I know." For the first time since I'd met him, he looked almost regretful. But here we are. He left me alone after that, disappearing into his study with men in dark suits who spoke in low voices about territory and payments and things I didn't want to understand. I tried to read, tried to focus, but all I could think about was what he'd said. I lied. What did that mean? That I wasn't nobody? That I did mean something to him? And why did the thought make my chest tight with something that felt dangerously like hope? That evening, Maria brought dinner to the library where I'd barricaded myself with books. "Mr. Moretti requests your presence in the garden," she said gently. "Tell Mr. Moretti I'm not a dog who comes when called." Her lips twitched. "I'll tell him you'll consider it." 10 minutes later, curiosity won. I found him in the private garden behind the townhouse, a space that shouldn't exist in Manhattan but did, protected by brick walls and iron gates. Rose bushes lined the perimeter, their blooms heavy with late-season flowers. Dante stood near a stone bench, still wearing the black Henley, looking at something in his hands. "You came," he said without turning. "I was bored." "Liar." The word was soft, almost affectionate. He turned and held out what he'd been examining, a single white rose, perfectly formed. "My mother planted these," he said quietly, "before she died. They're the only thing in this whole house that doesn't have blood on it." I took the rose carefully, mindful of thorns. "How old were you when she died?" 12. He sat on the bench and the movement seemed almost vulnerable. "Car accident. At least, that's what the police report said." "But you don't believe that?" "I stopped believing in accidents a long time ago." He looked up at me, and in the fading light his eyes were softer. She hated this life, hated what my father was, but she couldn't leave because leaving meant putting me in danger. So she stayed in her own cage. "Yes." I sat beside him, the rose still in my hands. "Is that why you brought me here? To your mother's garden?" "I brought you here because it's the only place in this house where I can think clearly." He paused. "And because I wanted you to understand." "Understand what?" "That I'm not keeping you here out of cruelty. I'm keeping you here because..." He stopped, jaw tight like the words cost him something. "Because," I prompted, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my breath catch. Want. Raw and unfiltered. Because if something happened to you, if Kozlov hurt you because of me, because of a dress and bad timing and all the violence I've spent my whole life trying to control. His hand moved, almost touching my face, then dropped. I couldn't live with that. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Dante, don't." He stood abruptly, creating distance. "Don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I'm something other than what I am." His voice turned harsh. "I'm a monster, Elena. I've done things that would make you run screaming. Don't romanticize this just because I gave you a flower." But his hands were shaking. Just slightly. Just enough for me to see the crack in his armor. "What if I don't want to run?" I asked softly. He closed his eyes like my words physically hurt him. "Then you're more dangerous than Kozlov could ever be." He left me in the garden, surrounded by his mother's roses, holding a flower with thorns that drew tiny drops of blood from my palm. I didn't let go. 3 days passed in the beautiful prison. I learned the rhythm of Dante's world meetings behind closed doors, phone calls in Italian and Russian and languages I didn't recognize, men coming and going at all hours with news that made his expression harder each time. He avoided me. Not obviously. He still checked on me, brief appearances in doorways, asking if I needed anything, his eyes lingering a moment too long before he disappeared again. But the garden conversation had shifted something between us, and now he kept distance like it was strategy, like I was dangerous, like he was afraid of what would happen if he got too close. I told myself I was relieved. That distance was safer, better. I was lying. On the 4th morning, I found him in his study at dawn, still wearing yesterday's clothes, papers and photographs spread across his desk in organized chaos. "Have you slept?" I asked from the doorway. He looked up, shadows under his eyes. "Have you?" Fair question. I'd spent most nights in the library, reading until my eyes burned, trying to exhaust myself into sleep that wouldn't come. "What are you working on?" Nothing you need to worry about. I moved into the room anyway. If it's about me, I have a right to know. His expression flickered frustration and something else. Then he sighed and gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. I sat. He selected a photograph from the mess of papers and slid it across the desk. It was me. Outside the gallery, the night we'd met, the black dress stark against the evening light, my face caught mid-laugh at something Sophia had said. Kozlov's people took this 3 minutes after you arrived, Dante said quietly. They didn't know who you were yet. Just that you were wearing that dress. He laid out another photo. Me at my apartment building, 2 days before the gala, another. Me on campus crossing the quad, another. Me in the library where I worked, shelving books. My stomach turned. They'd been watching you, I whispered, for at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. He pulled the photos back, organizing them like evidence at a crime scene. Someone in Kozlov's organization saw you wearing that dress, probably at a boutique or a friend's apartment, and flagged it. They've been documenting your movements ever since. But why? I'm nobody because they thought you were somebody. He tapped one of the photos. Kozlov's mistress, the one who died, she bought that dress from an exclusive designer. Only 3 were made. Sophia got your dress secondhand, didn't she? I nodded numbly. From a consignment shop in the village? How did you? Because that's where Kozlov's mistress sold her clothes after she decided to run. His voice was clinical, but his hands were tight on the desk. She sold everything she owned to fund her escape. The dress ended up at that consignment shop. Your friend bought it without knowing its history, and when you wore it to the gallery, Kozlov's people assumed you were connected to me, a replacement, a message. A coincidence, I breathed. The deadliest kind. I stared at the photographs, evidence of a life I'd been living in ignorance while danger circled. What happened to her? I asked quietly. Kozlov's mistress. Dante's expression went dark. Do you really want to know? Yes. He opened a drawer, pulled out another photograph, and placed it face down on the desk between us. Her name was Irina Volkov, 24, art student from Moscow. His voice was flat, emotionless. Kozlov kept her in a penthouse in Tribeca, bought her anything she wanted, and in return, she was supposed to smile and keep his secrets. But she didn't. She fell in love with one of my men, started passing information, money movements, territory negotiations, names of politicians Kozlov owned. He paused. When he found out, he made an example of her. The Hudson, I whispered, remembering what he'd told me that first night. Yes, but not before. He stopped, jaw tight. Tell me. Not before he made sure she suffered. Made sure anyone who thought about betraying him would remember what happened to the last person who tried. He turned the photograph over. I looked at it for 3 seconds before I had to look away, bile rising in my throat. Dante's hand moved like he might reach for mine, then stopped. That's what you're protecting me from? I said, voice shaking. Yes, and you think Kozlov would do that to me? I think he would do worse. The raw honesty in his voice made me look up. Because you're not just someone who betrayed him, you're someone he thinks I care about, and hurting you would hurt me. Do you? The question escaped before I could stop it. Do I what? Care about me? The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. I can't afford to care about anyone, he said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. Later that afternoon, I found the photo album. I'd been exploring the 3rd floor, specifically off-limits according to Maria, which naturally made it more interesting, and found a bedroom that had been Dante's as a child. Posters of soccer players, shelves of books in Italian and English, and on the desk, a leather album. I opened it before guilt could stop me. Photographs of a family I'd only heard about in fragments. A woman with dark hair and Dante's eyes, smiling at the camera. A man who looked like power personified, one hand on young Dante's shoulder, and Dante himself maybe 10 years old, grinning like he didn't yet know what his life would become. You shouldn't be in here. I spun around. Dante stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean she liked to garden," he said, moving into the room. "My mother, she said flowers were proof that beautiful things could grow even in poisoned soil." He took the album from my hands, looking at a photograph of his mother holding roses. "You look like her," I said softly. "I have her eyes and my father's instincts." He closed the album. "Worst possible combination." "I don't think so." He looked at me then, and something in his expression cracked. "Elena." My name in his voice was warning and plea. "You need to stop." "Stop what?" Looking at me like I'm capable of being saved. He set the album down, moving closer. "I'm not a romance novel villain who just needs the right woman to fix him. I'm a man who's ordered deaths, who's watched people beg for mercy I didn't give, who will continue to do those things because it's what keeps my world running." "I know." "Do you?" He was close now, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Do you understand that even if Kozlov disappeared tomorrow, even if every threat vanished, I would still be exactly what I am?" "Yes." "Then why?" His hand moved to my face, cupping my jaw with heartbreaking gentleness. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the warmth of his palm against my skin, the way his thumb traced my cheekbone like I was something precious. "Because you gave me roses," I whispered. "Because you protect people you don't have to protect. Because you're standing in your childhood bedroom looking at photographs of your mother and pretending you don't feel anything." "Elena." "Because you're not just what you do, Dante. You're also what you choose not to do. And you chose to save me." His forehead dropped to mine, eyes closed, breath unsteady. "This is a mistake," he murmured. "I know. You should hate me. I know. But you don't." It wasn't a question. "No," I breathed. "I don't." For one perfect, impossible moment, I thought he might kiss me. Then his phone rang harsh, insistent, and the moment shattered. He stepped back, answering with a voice that had gone cold and controlled again. "What?" Pause. His expression went lethal. "Where?" He hung up, looked at me with something like regret. "Stay in this house. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but Maria." "What's happening? Kozlov knows where you are." My blood went cold. "How?" "I don't know yet. But he's moving, and we're out of time." He was gone before I could respond, leaving me alone with photographs of a family destroyed by the same violence now circling me. I touched my cheek where his hand had been and tried not to think about what out of time meant. The transition happened in under an hour. Men appeared. Dante's men, I assumed, though they didn't introduce themselves. They moved through the townhouse with military efficiency, packing essentials, checking exits, communicating in terse phrases that told me nothing and everything. Maria helped me pack a bag, her hands steady while mine shook. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere safer." "Then here." She didn't answer. Which was answer enough. Dante reappeared just as sunset turned the windows gold. He'd changed into tactical gear, black cargo pants, fitted shirt, holster visible at his hip. He looked like violence given form. He looked like exactly what he was. "Car's ready," one of his men said. Dante nodded, then turned to me. His eyes scanned me head to toe, checking for injuries that didn't exist yet. "Stay close to Marco." He indicated a mountain of a man near the door. "He'll get you to the safe house. I'll meet you there." "You're not coming?" "I have business to finish first." "What kind of business?" His expression told me I didn't want to know. "Dante." I grabbed his arm before he could leave. "Please be careful." Something softened in his face, just for a moment. "I'm always careful, Piccola." He touched my cheek brief, achingly gentle. "Go, now." The safe house was 2 hours north, nestled in woods that looked like something from a Gothic novel, all shadow and isolation. The house itself was modern, all glass and steel, the kind of architecture that said money and defensible position in equal measure. Marco led me inside, checked every room, then positioned himself by the front entrance like a sentinel. "Mr. Moretti will be here within 3 hours," he said. "What if he's not? Then I get you somewhere even safer." He didn't elaborate on what that meant. I was left alone in a living room that could have been featured in design magazines, all clean lines and expensive minimalism. Nothing personal. Nothing that spoke of actual life. A prison, just a prettier one. Dante arrived 4 hours later. I heard the car, the low voices, then his footsteps. I'd been curled on the sofa, trying to read by lamplight, but I'd absorbed nothing. Just read the same page, over and over while my mind catalogued every possible disaster. He appeared in the doorway, and my heart stopped. Blood on his knuckles, shirt torn at the shoulder. A cut above his eyebrow that had been cleaned but not bandaged. Oh my God, I was on my feet, crossing to him before thought caught up with instinct. "It's not mine," he said quickly. Most of it. He caught my hands before I could touch the cut. "Elena, I'm fine. You're bleeding." "Barely." But he let me lead him to the kitchen. Let me find the first aid kit Marco directed me to. Let me clean the cut while he sat on a bar stool and watched me with an expression I couldn't read. "What happened?" I asked, dabbing antiseptic on the wound as gently as I could. "I had a conversation with one of Kozlov's lieutenants." "This is what conversations look like in your world?" "Sometimes." I pressed gauze to the cut. "Did you get answers?" "Yes." His voice was grim. "Someone in my organization has been feeding Kozlov information. That's how he knew about you. How he found the townhouse. Do you know who?" "Not yet, but I will." The promise in his voice was dark. I taped the gauze in place, then stepped back to examine my work. He caught my wrist before I could retreat completely. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not running. For not looking at me like I'm a monster when I show up covered in someone else's blood. You're protecting me. That doesn't make you a monster. It makes me exactly what I am." He released my wrist. "You should get some sleep. We'll be here for a few days while I secure the situation. I'm not tired." "Liar." I smiled despite everything. "You keep calling me that. Because you keep lying." He stood, moving to the kitchen window that overlooked dark woods. "You're exhausted, terrified, probably regretting the day you put on that dress." "I'm not." He turned, eyebrow raised. "Regretting the dress," I clarified. "Everything else is terrifying, yes, but I'm not sorry I met you. Elena, I know you think I don't understand what this is. What you are. But I'm not some sheltered child who needs protecting from reality." I moved closer. "I see exactly who you are, Dante, and I'm still here, because you don't have a choice. I've had choices every day. I could have called the police that first night, could have screamed when you took me from the gala, could have fought Marco instead of getting in that car. I was standing right in front of him now. I chose to trust you. I'm still choosing." He looked at me like I was something incomprehensible. "Why?" The word was barely audible. "Because underneath all the violence and control and walls you've built," I touched his chest right over his heart, "there's someone who plants roses for his dead mother, who keeps his childhood bedroom like a shrine, who holds me like I'm something breakable even when his world is falling apart." His hand covered mine, pressing my palm against his heartbeat. "You don't know what you're asking for," he murmured. "Then tell me. I'm asking you to tie yourself to a man who will always choose violence first, who will make enemies of your enemies and enemies of your friends, who can offer you safety but never peace." His other hand came up to cradle my face, who will be selfish enough to keep you even knowing you deserve better. "What if I don't want better?" "Then you're insane." "Probably." He laughed, actual laughter, rough and surprised, and the sound did something to my chest. "You're going to ruin me," he said almost to himself. "Promise." And then, finally, he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. His mouth claimed mine with the kind of intensity that came from days of restraint finally breaking. One hand tangled in my hair, angling my head exactly where he wanted it. The other spanned my lower back, pulling me flush against him. I'd been kissed before. Fumbling college attempts, brief moments that meant nothing. This meant everything. This was possession and question and plea all at once. This was Dante Moretti, the man who controlled empires, surrendering control to something he couldn't calculate or command. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "We shouldn't," he started. I kissed him again, cutting off the protest. This time he groaned, low and desperate, and the sound sent heat flooding through me. His hands moved to my hips, lifting me onto the kitchen counter, stepping between my knees like he'd imagined this exact configuration. Elena. My name was a prayer and a curse. If we do this, I know, you don't. His forehead rested against mine. If I have you, really have you, I won't be able to let you go. Even when this is over, even when you could leave safely, then don't let go. He pulled back to look at me, searching my face for doubt he wouldn't find. "You're sure?" I answered by pulling him back to me, kissing him with all the certainty I felt. He responded like a man starved, his control finally, fully breaking. But even then, even lost in this, he was gentle. His hands trembled slightly as they traced my sides. His kisses turned soft between the hungry ones, like he was reminding himself, "I was real. Not here," he said against my lips. "Not like this." He lifted me from the counter, carrying me through the safe house to a bedroom I hadn't explored, setting me down on a bed that smelled like fresh linen and possibility. "I need you to understand something," he said, hovering over me, his weight supported on his forearms. "After tonight, you're mine. Not because of Kozlov, not because of protection or circumstance, because I'm choosing you, and I'm asking you to choose me back." I touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "I already chose you," I whispered. "Days ago, in your mother's garden." Something broke in his expression, the last wall crumbling. "Then God help us both," he murmured, and kissed me like the world was ending. I woke wrapped in warmth and safety I'd never known before. Dante's arm was heavy across my waist, his breathing steady against my shoulder. Early morning light filtered through unfamiliar windows, casting everything in soft gold. The night came back in fragments. His hands, his mouth, the way he'd whispered my name like it was sacred, the careful way he'd undressed me, giving me 1,000 chances to change my mind. The moment I'd pulled him close instead and felt him surrender completely. He'd been gentle, terrifyingly gentle, like I was something precious he was afraid to break. And afterward, he'd held me until I fell asleep, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. Now, in the quiet morning, I could study him without his armor in place. The sharp lines of his face softened in sleep. The scar on his shoulder I'd traced with my fingers last night, earning the story in whispered words. The way his hand flexed against my hip, even unconsciously, like he was making sure I was still there. I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I didn't regret it. His eyes opened instant awareness, no grogginess. Years of survival training making sleep light. "Hi," I said softly. Something I'd never seen before flickered across his face. Contentment. Peace. "Hi," he murmured back, pulling me closer. "Did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks." "Good." He kissed my forehead. "We have about 10 minutes before Marco knocks on that door with updates. How do you want to spend them?" I burrowed closer. "Like this. I can work with that." But the peace was fragile, and we both knew it. Marco knocked exactly 9 minutes later. Dante was already dressed, tactical gear back in place. The soft morning version of him locked away behind command and control. He opened the door a crack, exchanged low words I couldn't hear, then closed it with an expression that made my stomach drop. "What?" I asked, pulling on the shirt he'd loaned me. It fell to mid-thigh, smelling like him. "Kozlov wants a meeting. With you. With both of us." My blood went cold. "Why?" "Because he knows you're here, and he's proposing a trade." Dante's jaw was tight. "Information on who's been leaking from my organization, in exchange for proof that you're not involved in my business." That's what we wanted, right? For him to know I'm nobody? Yes. But he moved to the window, checking the woods like threats might materialize from shadows. I don't trust it. This isn't how Kozlov operates. He doesn't offer clean solutions. Then what does he want really? I don't know yet, and that's what worries me. The meeting was set for that evening at a neutral location, an upscale restaurant Kozlov owned, public enough to discourage violence, private enough for honest conversation. You're not going, Dante said as Marco briefed him on security arrangements. He asked for both of us, I pointed out. I don't care what he asked for. If I don't go, he'll think you're hiding me, that I am important to you. I moved in front of him, making him look at me. This is the fastest way to end this, right? Show him I'm just a civilian who got caught in the crossfire? His hands came up to frame my face. I can't protect you at a restaurant full of his men. Then we don't go. If we don't go, he'll see it as an insult. It'll make everything worse. The conflict in his eyes was painful to witness. I can't win this. Yes, you can. I covered his hands with mine. We go. We're polite. We show him exactly what he needs to see, that I'm nobody worth his attention, and then we leave. Elena, you taught me something last night, I said softly. You showed me what it looks like to trust someone completely. Now I'm asking you to trust me. I can do this. He closed his eyes, the internal battle visible. If anything happens, he said finally, anything at all, you run. You don't wait for me, you don't try to help. You run, and you find Marco. Understood? Understood. He pulled me against his chest, holding on like he could keep me safe through sheer force of will. I can't lose you, he whispered into my hair. You won't. I hoped I wasn't lying. The restaurant was called Tsarsko Sal. Russian opulence meets Manhattan wealth. Crystal chandeliers, gold leaf accents, waiters who moved like dancers. And at the center table, Viktor Kozlov. He was older than I expected. Maybe 60. Silver hair swept back, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my year's tuition. But his eyes were what stopped me. Cold. Calculating. The eyes of a man who'd watched people die and felt nothing. Mr. Moretti, he said in accented English, standing as we approached, and the mysterious young lady. Please, sit. Dante's hand was on my lower back, possessive and protective. We sat across from Kozlov, flanked by his men, while Dante's security formed a perimeter by the doors. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Kozlov began, pouring vodka from a crystal decanter. I find that misunderstandings are best resolved face-to-face, yes? Misunderstandings. Dante's voice was flat. Is that what you're calling attempted kidnapping now? Please. Kozlov's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's not be dramatic. My men were merely investigating a situation. When a woman appears in Irina's dress at an event you were attending, surely you understand my curiosity? He said her name, Irina-like. She'd been a possession, not a person. This is Elena Castillo, Dante said, his tone carefully neutral. Graduate student, no family connections. No involvement in my business or yours. She bought that dress secondhand, not knowing its history. Kozlov's eyes moved to me, assessing. Is this true, Miss Castillo? I forced myself to meet his gaze. Yes, I bought it from a consignment shop. I didn't know it was. I couldn't finish. Irina always did have excellent taste. He sipped his vodka. Pity about her ending, but betrayal demands consequences, yes? The casual cruelty made my stomach turn. We're here to establish that Elena isn't involved, Dante said, redirecting. You've seen her background check. She's nobody worth your attention. Nobody, Kozlov repeated thoughtfully. And yet, Dante Moretti, the man who shows emotion about as often as Moscow shows mercy, pulls this nobody from a gala, hides her in his home, moves her to a secure location, and brings her to a meeting rather than simply handing over documents. Shit! I felt Dante tense beside me. That tells me, Kozlov continued, that she is very much somebody to you, which makes her extremely valuable. You're reading intention where there's only protocol, Dante replied smoothly. I don't leave loose ends. When your people targeted her based on a coincidence, she became a liability I needed to manage, nothing more. Then you won't mind if I verify her story personally? Before either of us could react, Kozlov produced a photograph and slid it across the table. It was me and Dante. Last night, through the safe house window, kissing. My heart stopped. You see, Kozlov said pleasantly, I don't believe in coincidences, Mr. Moretti. And I don't believe she's nobody. In fact, I think she's exactly what she appears to be your weakness. Dante's hand found mine under the table, squeezing once. A warning or a comfort, I couldn't tell. What do you want, Victor? His voice was dangerous now. The pretense dropped. What I've always wanted. Territory. Specifically, the waterfront contracts you've held for the past decade. Kozlov leaned back. Sign them over to me, and Miss Castillo continues her very ordinary life, unbothered by my organization. No. No. Kozlov's eyebrows rose. Those contracts are worth, what? 50 million annually? Surely this young woman isn't worth more than that to you. Dante's hand tightened on mine. Everything I own isn't worth her, he said quietly, but that doesn't mean I'm negotiating with you. The temperature in the room dropped. Then we have a problem, Kozlov said. No, Victor, you have a problem. Dante leaned forward. Because you just confirmed that you have no evidence Elena is involved in anything except existing in my proximity, which means your interest is purely leverage, and I don't respond well to leverage. Careful, Moretti, you're careful. Dante stood, pulling me up with him, because if anything happens to her, anything at all, I will burn your organization to the ground and salt the earth where it stood. That's not a threat, that's a promise. We walked out. Behind us, I heard Kozlov laugh. It was the most terrifying sound I'd ever heard. The car ride back to the safe house was silent and lethal. Dante stared out the window, his hands still gripping mine with bruising intensity. Marco drove with his eyes on the rearview mirror, tracking threats I couldn't see. He knows, I said finally, my voice small in the heavy quiet. Yes. He has pictures of us? Yes. Dante? Not now. His jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Not until we're secure. So I sat in silence, watching the city lights fade into darkness, and tried not to think about the look in Kozlov's eyes when he'd called me a weakness. Because he was right, I was Dante's weakness. And in his world, weaknesses got exploited until they broke you. The moment we were inside the safe house, Dante exploded into motion. How did he get those photos? His voice was controlled violence. The safe house location is need to know. 5 people maximum. Marco's expression was grim, which means the leak is close. Too close. Dante paced like a caged predator. I want background checks redone on everyone who had access to the townhouse and this location. Financial records, communications, everything. Already in motion, Marco said, then hesitated. Boss, there's something else. What? Kozlov's people have been asking questions about Miss Castillo's family, her father specifically. My blood went cold. My father died when I was 16. I know, Marco said gently, but apparently he had gambling debts. Significant ones, to an organization that was eventually absorbed by Kozlov's. The room tilted. No, I whispered. My father had problems, but he didn't. Elena. Dante was in front of me suddenly, hands on my shoulders. Look at me. I did, barely. What Marco is saying is that Kozlov might try to claim your father's debt transferred to you. It's bullshit. It won't hold up legally, but in our world, in your world, legal doesn't matter. I finished numbly. Not when it comes to leverage, no. His thumbs stroked my shoulders. But I won't let him use that against you. I won't let him use anything against you. How can you stop him? He wants territory you won't give up. He has photographs proving I matter to you. And now he has a fake claim on my family debt. My voice broke. There's no way out of this that doesn't end with someone getting hurt. Then someone gets hurt. His voice was flat, final. But it won't be you. Dante, no. He pulled me against his chest, one hand in my hair. I don't care what it costs. I don't care what I have to burn down. You are the line I won't cross. I held on to him, breathing in his scent, trying to memorize the feeling of safety before it disappeared. This is my fault, I whispered. If I hadn't worn that dress, if you hadn't worn that dress, I never would have met you. He pulled back to look at me, and that would have been the real tragedy. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the window, watching dark woods and trying to find a solution that didn't end in blood. Behind me, I heard Dante enter the room. You should rest, he said quietly. So should you. Can't? He moved to stand beside me. Every time I close my eyes, I see that photograph. Kozlov's people watching us through the window. Watching us be happy, I said softly. Yes. Do you regret it? Last night? His hand caught my chin, turning me to face him. I regret that it gave him ammunition. I don't regret a single moment with you. Even though I'm your weakness? Especially because of that. His thumb traced my lower lip. I've spent my entire life being strong, being in control, never letting anyone close enough to matter. And then you walked into that gallery in a dress that should have gotten you killed, and suddenly I couldn't breathe without making sure you were safe. That's not weakness, I breathed. That's being human. In my world, they're the same thing. He kissed me then, soft and desperate and heartbreaking, like he was trying to apologize for something he couldn't change. When we pulled apart, his expression had shifted to something resolved. I'm going to end this, he said. How? By giving him what he wants. My heart stopped. The waterfront contracts? No. His smile was dark. I'm going to give him the traitor in my organization, the one who's been feeding him information, who told him about this location, who gave him leverage to use against us. You know who it is? I have suspicions. Marco is running final confirmation now. He touched my face. Once Kozlov has his leak, once he knows I've cleaned house and he has no more inside information, you become worthless to him again. Just another civilian. Unless he still wants the territory. He does. But without the leak, he has no way to pressure me for it. We'll be back to the old status quo rivals, but not at war. It sounded too easy. What aren't you telling me? I asked. His expression flickered. Delivering a traitor to Viktor Kozlov isn't gentle. He'll make an example. It will be public and brutal, and designed to remind everyone what happens to people who cross him. You're going to watch someone die because of me. I'm going to watch someone die because they betrayed me and put you in danger. His voice was steel. Don't mistake this for sacrifice, Elena. This is justice. My kind of justice. I wanted to argue. Wanted to say there had to be another way, but I'd seen what Kozlov did to people he considered traitors. Seen the photograph of Irina. Knew that in this world, mercy was a luxury that got you killed. When? I asked instead. Tomorrow night. Marco will stay with you. I'll deliver the traitor personally. Make sure Kozlov understands the message. And then we wait. If Kozlov accepts this as payment for his trouble, you're free. If he pushes for more, his jaw tightened, then this becomes a war. He made love to me that night like it was the last time, slow and thorough and achingly tender, mapping every inch of my skin like he was committing me to memory. When I tried to rush him, he pinned my hands and shook his head. Let me have this, he murmured against my throat. Let me remember you like this. You're talking like you're not coming back. I'm coming back. His eyes met mine, but after tomorrow, you'll know exactly what I am, what I'm capable of. And I need to remember what it felt like when you looked at me like I was something other than a monster. Dante. He kissed away my protest, replacing words with touches that said everything we couldn't speak aloud. Afterward, he held me against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. If something goes wrong, he started. Nothing will go wrong. But if it does, Marco has instructions. Money, new identity, passage out of the country. You'll be safe. I don't want safe if safe means without you. His arms tightened. Don't say that. It's true. Elena. My name was broken. You can't tie yourself to me like this. I'm giving you an out. Take it. No. You're impossible, he whispered, but I heard the smile in his voice. I learned from the best. We lay there as night deepened, both pretending we believed tomorrow would fix everything, both knowing that in his world, nothing was ever that simple. Marco woke me just after dawn. He's gone, Marco said before I could ask. Left 2 hours ago. Wanted you to sleep. I sat up, pulling the blanket around me. The bed still smelled like Dante cedar and smoke and safety. Where did he go? To collect the traitor. Marco's expression was carefully neutral. The exchange is set for 9 p.m. at one of Kozlov's warehouses in Red Hook. 8 hours. I had 8 hours to wait and worry and imagine every possible disaster. What am I supposed to do until then? Stay here. Stay safe. Let him handle this. Marco moved to the window, checking the perimeter. He made me promise to keep you away from the exchange, no matter what you said. He knows me too well. He loves you. Marco glanced back. That's why he's doing this. Why he's willing to hand over someone from his own organization to a man like Kozlov. You should know that. The words settled in my chest, heavy and bright. He's never said it, I whispered. Men like Mr. Moretti don't say things like that easily. They show it through actions. Marco's voice was gentle. And every action he's taken since the moment he met you has been about keeping you alive. The day crawled by like torture. I tried to read, tried to eat the meals Maria prepared, tried not to imagine Dante walking into a warehouse controlled by his enemy. By 7 p.m. I couldn't take it anymore. I need to go, I told Marco. No, he needs to know I'm there, that I support him. That I couldn't finish, but Marco heard it anyway. Miss Castillo, if you show up at that exchange, you'll distract him, and distraction gets people killed. Then take me somewhere nearby, somewhere I can't be seen, but I'm close if something goes wrong. Marco studied me for a long moment. You really love him, he said. Not a question. Yes, he sighed. There's an office building across from the warehouse, empty at night. I can position you there with a view of the entrance, but you stay out of sight. If anything happens, we leave immediately. Understood? Understood. It was a lie, and we both knew it. The warehouse district in Red Hook looked like something from a noir film, all shadow and rust and broken streetlights. Marco positioned me on the 3rd floor of an abandoned office building, the windows grimy but intact. Below, the warehouse where the exchange would happen sat like a sleeping giant. Kozlov's people arrived an hour ago, Marco said, watching through binoculars. Mr. Moretti should be here any moment. Right on cue, headlights appeared. 2 black SUVs moving with careful precision. They stopped outside the warehouse entrance. Dante stepped out of the first vehicle. Even from this distance, I could see the set of his shoulders tension wrapped in control. He wore all black, no jacket despite the cold, and moved like violence barely leashed. 2 of his men dragged someone from the second vehicle. I couldn't see the traitor's face, but I saw them stumble. Saw Dante's hand on their shoulder, not gentle, but not cruel either, leading them toward execution with something that might have been regret. The warehouse door opened. Light spilled out, and with it, Viktor Kozlov. I can't hear what they're saying, I breathed. Marco handed me an earpiece. We have audio. But Miss Castillo, you might not want to. I put the earpiece in. Didn't have to come personally, Kozlov was saying, his voice crackling through the connection. You could have sent the traitor with one of your men. I handle my own problems, Dante replied. This is personal. Yes, I heard rumors you and Alexander were close once. My blood went cold. Alexander, I knew that name. He'd been at the townhouse, one of the men who'd helped coordinate my protection. We were, Dante said flatly, which makes his betrayal worse. They moved into the warehouse and I lost visual, but the audio continued. Why did you do it? Dante's voice directed at Alexander now. They have my sister. Alexander's voice was broken. Kozlov's people took her 6 months ago, said if I didn't provide information they'd… And you didn't come to me? Dante's voice was cold. You didn't think I could protect her. I couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk you choosing the organization over one girl. I would have chosen her. The rawness in Dante's voice made my chest ache. I would have moved heaven and earth to get her back safely, but instead, you betrayed me. You put Elena in danger. You gave Kozlov the ammunition he needed to start a war. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Silence, heavy and terrible. Then Kozlov spoke. Well, this is touching, but we had an agreement, Moretti. You deliver the traitor. I leave your woman alone. Where's Alexander's sister? About that. I could hear the smile in Kozlov's voice. She died 3 months ago, unfortunately. But young Alexander didn't know that, kept feeding us information, thinking he was saving her. Oh, God. I heard Dante's sharp intake of breath. You son of Alexander's voice broke into rage. Then gunfire. Sharp, rapid cracks that echoed through the audio in the night. Dante! I was on my feet, Marco's hands trying to pull me back. More gunfire. Shouting. The sound of something crashing. Then silence. Marco, we have to wait. His voice was steel. Mr. Moretti has protocol for this. We wait. He could be dead. He's not dead. How do you know? Because if he was, we'd be under attack already. Kozlov's people would come for you immediately. The logic was sound, but it didn't stop the terror crawling up my throat. The earpiece crackled. Outside now! Dante's voice, strained but alive. Move! Through the grimy window I saw the warehouse door explode outward. Dante appeared, dragging an injured man, one of his own. Blood on his shoulder, his face, his hands. Behind him, the warehouse erupted into flames. Get the car, he shouted, and his men scrambled. Then he looked up. Directly at the building where I was hidden, even from here, even through dirt and distance, I felt his eyes find mine. Fuck, Marco breathed. He knows you're here. The SUVs peeled away, and for a moment I thought Dante would leave without acknowledging me. Instead, one vehicle stopped. The window rolled down. His eyes met mine across the distance, and even covered in blood and ash, even having just walked through violence I couldn't imagine, his expression was clear. Stay alive. I'm coming back for you. Then they were gone. 20 minutes later, the warehouse was surrounded by fire trucks and police. By morning, the official story would be a gas leak. An accident. No mention of the bodies inside. No mention of the war that had almost started. Marco got me back to the safe house just after midnight. Dante was already there. He stood in the living room, cleaned up but wearing the exhaustion like a second skin. When he saw me, something cracked in his expression. You weren't supposed to be there, he said. I know. You could have been seen. Could have been targeted, I know. Elena. I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around him, holding on tight enough to feel his heartbeat. Are you okay? I whispered against his chest. His arms came around me, crushing me close. You're asking if I'm okay? Yes. He laughed, the sound broken. I just handed a man I considered a friend to an enemy who killed him. I burned down a warehouse. I've probably started a war despite my best efforts. And you want to know if I'm okay? Yes. No, he said into my hair. I'm not okay. I'm covered in blood. I'm responsible for multiple deaths tonight, and all I can think about is that you were across the street watching me become exactly the monster I warned you about. I pulled back to look at him. You're not a monster. Elena, you're not. A monster wouldn't have tried to save Alexander's sister if he'd known. Wouldn't have looked shattered when you learned she was already dead. Wouldn't have carried your injured man out of a burning building. You don't know what I did in there. I don't need to know the details. I know you, and I know that everything you did tonight you did to protect me. I touched his face, my fingers coming away with traces of ash. So no, you're not a monster. You're a man trying to keep people safe in a world that doesn't allow for safety, and I love you for it. The words hung between us. His eyes closed. Don't. Too late. Elena. I love you, Dante Moretti. I love you covered in blood. I love you walking through fire. I love you despite the violence and because of the tenderness. I love. He kissed me, silencing the words with a desperation that spoke of fear and relief and something that might have been love trying to find its way out. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. If you stay with me, he whispered, this is what life looks like. Danger and blood and watching me do terrible things for good reasons. I know. You deserve better. I want you. That's not. He stopped, seeming to realize the futility of the argument. You're impossible. You've mentioned that before. Despite everything, he smiled. Yeah, I have. He picked me up, carrying me toward the bedroom. Where are we going? To bed. Where I'm going to spend the rest of the night convincing myself you're real, and you're here, and you're somehow still choosing me. Always, I whispered. And I meant it. Morning brought consequences. I woke to urgent voices and the sound of car doors slamming. Dante was already gone from the bed, his side cold. I pulled on clothes and found him in the living room, surrounded by men in suits who all looked like they'd been up for days. Can't prove it was us, one was saying. The warehouse was registered to a shell corporation. Kozlov knows it was us, Dante interrupted. He'll retaliate. The question is how and when. Boss, maybe we should. The man stopped when he saw me in the doorway. Dante's eyes found mine, softened for just a moment, then hardened again. Give us a minute, he said to his men. They filed out, leaving us alone in the sudden quiet. What's happening? I asked. Kozlov survived the warehouse fire. 3 of his men didn't, including the one who killed Alexander. Dante moved to the coffee maker, poured 2 cups like it was normal morning routine. He's calling for a sit-down, neutral territory, mediator present. Essentially, a trial. For what? For violating the exchange terms. I was supposed to deliver Alexander alive. Instead, Alexander died in a building that subsequently burned with several of Kozlov's men inside. He handed me coffee. In our world, that looks like I set a trap. But you didn't. Alexander went crazy when he learned about his sister. I know. You know. But Kozlov is claiming I knew she was dead, that I used that information to incite violence that would justify eliminating his men. Dante's jaw tightened. It's smart, twisted but smart. If he can prove intent, he can claim I broke our agreement, which means I'm fair game again, I finished quietly. Yes. I set down the coffee, my hand shaking. So what do? We go to the sit-down. We present evidence that I acted in good faith, and we hope the mediator sides with us. And if they don't... His expression was answer enough. The sit-down was held at a Russian Orthodox church in Brighton Beach, neutral ground, sacred enough that violence was forbidden by mutual agreement. The mediator was a man called Solomon, elderly and sharp-eyed, who'd been arbitrating disputes between families for 40 years. I sat in a pew near the back while Dante and Kozlov faced each other across the aisle, Solomon between them like a judge. State your grievance, Solomon said to Kozlov. Dante Moretti violated the terms of our agreement, Kozlov began. He was to deliver a traitor Alexander Volkov alive and intact. Instead, Alexander is dead, along with 3 of my men, in a fire that destroyed my property. And your evidence that this was intentional? Kozlov produced a file. Alexander's sister died 3 months ago in a car accident. Public record. Easily verified. Moretti could have discovered this information at any time. But didn't, Dante interjected. I learned of her death at the same moment Alexander did, when you told him in the warehouse. Before that, I had no reason to investigate her status. I believed you were holding her hostage, same as Alexander did. Convenient, Kozlov sneered. Provable, Dante countered. My digital searches, phone records, all show no inquiry into the sister until after the exchange. I can provide that documentation. Solomon studied them both. And the fire? Alexander attacked when he learned about his sister, Dante said. One of Kozlov's men shot him. The gunfire hit something, a gas line, chemical storage, I don't know, but the explosion wasn't planned. I barely got my own people out. Lies, enough. Solomon's voice cracked like a whip. Victor, do you have evidence the fire was planned? Security footage, witness testimony, anything beyond speculation? Kozlov's silence spoke volumes. Solomon turned to Dante. And the men who died in the fire, were they deliberately prevented from escaping? No. I tried to get everyone out, but the explosion was immediate. There wasn't time. Dante's voice was steady, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. I won't claim to mourn Kozlov's men, but I didn't murder them. This was chaos, not calculation. Solomon was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving between the two men. I find that Dante Moretti acted within the bounds of the agreement, he said finally. The death of Alexander Volkov and the subsequent casualties were the result of circumstances beyond his control. The original exchange delivery of the traitor was completed in good faith. Kozlov's expression went deadly. This is, however, Solomon continued, Dante Moretti, you will compensate Victor Kozlov for the property damage and the loss of his men. $2 million paid within 30 days. Dante nodded once. Agreed. And the matter of the young woman? Solomon's eyes found me in the pews. Miss Elena Castillo is to be considered untouchable by all parties. Her involvement was circumstantial. Any action taken against her will be viewed as a direct violation of this arbitration and will result in sanctions. Unacceptable, Kozlov started. The ruling is final, Solomon said with steel in his voice. Unless you wish to reject mediation entirely and face the consequences of open war? The threat hung heavy in the incense-thick air. Kozlov's jaw worked. Then, finally, I accept the ruling. As do I, Dante said. Solomon stood. Then we are done here. May God have mercy on you both. We left the church in separate cars, Kozlov's black sedans heading south while our SUVs turned north. I sat next to Dante, watching the tension slowly drain from his shoulders. It's over? I asked quietly. It's over. You're safe. Officially off limits to Kozlov's organization. He took my hand, brought it to his lips. You're free. The word echoed strangely. Free. Free to go back to my apartment, my classes, my normal life that felt like it belonged to a different person now. What if I don't want to be free? I asked. He looked at me. Elena, what if I want to stay with you? You can't. This world, I've already seen this world. I've seen what you do, what you sacrifice, what it costs you. I turned to face him fully. And I'm still here. I'm still choosing you. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me exactly what my life would look like if I stayed. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at our joined hands. You'd live in a fortress, he said finally. Protected, but isolated. You'd never be able to go anywhere without security. Your friends would be vetted, your movements tracked. Every person you meet would be a potential threat. Okay. You'd watch me leave for meetings that might end in violence. You'd wait up at night wondering if I'd come home. You'd see the blood, hear the phone calls, know the weight of the decisions I make. Okay. You'd be tied to a man who can't promise you peace, who will always choose the safety of hundreds over the comfort of one, who will make you a target just by loving you. Okay. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. How was any of that okay? Because it comes with you. I touched his face. Because loving you means accepting all of you, the darkness and the light, the violence and the roses. And I do. I accept it, all of it. Elena, do you love me? The question stopped him cold. It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters. Do you love me, Dante? He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were full of every emotion he'd been holding back. Yes, he whispered. God help me, yes. I love you so much it terrifies me. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing before I sleep. You're the reason I checked my phone 40 times during that arbitration. You're the only soft thing in my entire world, and I love you so much I'd burn everything down to keep you safe." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Then let me stay," I said. "Let me be the soft thing in your world. Let me love you back." He pulled me against him, holding on like I was the only thing keeping him anchored. "You're sure?" His voice was muffled against my hair. "I've never been more sure of anything." "Then stay," he breathed. "Stay with me. Be mine. Let me love you the only way I know, how desperately and completely and probably too much." "Yes," I said simply. And just like that, my old life ended and my new one began. 3 months later, I stood in Dante's mother's garden, surrounded by late autumn roses that shouldn't still be blooming but were. The townhouse had become home, not a prison, but a sanctuary. My books filled the library shelves between his first editions. My coffee mug sat next to his in the kitchen. My laughter echoed in rooms that had been silent for too long. It wasn't the life I'd planned. My graduate program had shifted to remote learning, my thesis advisor baffled but accommodating. Sophia visited twice a week, always escorted by Marco, who she'd started looking at with something more than professional appreciation. But I was happy, genuinely, unexpectedly happy. There you are. I turned to find Dante in the garden doorway, dressed in casual clothes jeans and a dark sweater that made him look less like a crime lord and more like the man I'd fallen in love with. "I'm hiding from your accountant," I admitted. "He wants to talk to me about the foundation. You're allowed to say no." But I don't want to say no. I'd started a nonprofit 3 weeks ago, funded by Dante's money, and focused on helping families affected by gambling addiction. My father's ghost, finally put to productive use. I just need a break from numbers. He moved into the garden, pulling me against him. "How about a break from everything? What did you have in mind?" "There's a villa in Tuscany, completely off-grid. No one knows about it except me. I thought we could disappear for a while. Just us." "What about your business?" "Marco can handle things for 2 weeks." His arms tightened around me. "I want to wake up with you in a place where no one's trying to kill us, where the biggest decision is red wine or white. Where I can be just Dante, not Moretti." "You're offering me a vacation?" "I'm offering you a glimpse of what normal could look like, if you still want that." I pulled back to look at him. "Do you want that?" "I want whatever keeps you smiling like you were when I walked out here." He touched my face. "You've given up so much for this life. Let me give you something back. You give me plenty. Danger and isolation and a last name that makes people nervous, safety and love and a garden full of roses," I corrected. "You give me everything that matters." His expression softened in that way it only did when we were alone. "How did I get this lucky? You pulled me out of a gala and threatened a Russian mobster for me. The luck was inevitable." He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Is that how you remember it?" "That's exactly how it happened." I wrapped my arms around his neck. My dangerous, overprotective, secretly soft mafia boss swept me away from danger. Secretly soft. "You planted new roses last week. I saw you." His ears actually went pink. "The garden needed—" "You're soft," I said, kissing his jaw. "At least for me." "Only for you," he agreed. "The rest of the world gets the monster. The rest of the world can have him. I'll keep the man who plants roses." We left for Tuscany the following week. The villa was everything he promised. Stone walls covered in ivy, olive groves stretching toward horizons, and silence that felt like luxury after months of constant security. No guards. No phones. Just us in the Italian countryside and nothing to do but exist together. "This is strange," I said our second morning, drinking coffee on the terrace while Dante read a book that wasn't about territory or contracts. "Strange how?" "Normal strange. Good strange." I set down my cup. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong." "Nothing's going wrong. I have people watching Kozlov. If he so much as looks at a photograph of you, I'll know." He pulled me onto his lap. "For the next 12 days, we're just a couple on vacation. No danger, no drama, just this. I could get used to this. That's the idea. We spent the days exploring nearby towns, eating food that tasted like sunshine, and pretending we were people who'd met in ordinary ways. The nights were ours making love in a bed that smelled like lavender, talking until dawn, mapping the future in whispers and promises. On our last night, Dante took me to the villa's rooftop where stars spread like diamonds across black velvet. "I have something for you," he said. "If it's another necklace, I'm running out of places to wear them." He pulled out a small velvet box. My breath stopped. "I'm not proposing," he said quickly. "Not yet. Not until you've had more time to be sure about this life. But I wanted you to have this." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a small diamond, flanked by 2 rubies. "It was my mother's," he said quietly. "My father gave it to her when they first met, before the violence and the business consumed everything, when they were still just 2 people falling in love." I stared at the ring, overwhelmed. "I don't deserve, you deserve everything." He took the ring out, sliding it onto my right hand. Not the engagement finger, but close enough to mean something. "This is a promise that when you're ready, when you've lived in my world long enough to be absolutely certain, I'll ask you properly, but until then, I want you to know that you're mine, Alina, completely and forever." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "And you're mine," I whispered back, dangerous and protective and perfect. He kissed me under the Tuscan stars, and for a moment, everything was simple and beautiful and right. We returned to New York to find the world had shifted. Kozlov had disappeared, not dead, Marco informed us, but retired. Somewhere in Russia, living off money he'd squirreled away, no longer interested in American territory. "Why?" I asked. "Health scare," Marco said carefully. "Heart attack. Made him reevaluate his priorities." Dante's expression was neutral. "How unfortunate." I caught the edge in his voice. "You didn't." "I did nothing." But his eyes said otherwise. Said that maybe Kozlov's health scare hadn't been entirely natural. Said that some threats were eliminated quietly, finally, permanently. I didn't ask for details. Didn't want to know. Because that was the bargain I'd made. Loving a man who did dark things for good reasons, and trusting that he'd protect me from the worst of it. 6 months after that first night in the gallery, I stood in the garden again, this time with Sophia beside me. "You're really happy," she said. Not quite a question. I am. Even with everything, the security, the restrictions, the danger, even with all of that, I touched the ring on my right hand. "He's worth it." "I believe you." She smiled. "And for what it's worth, I think you're good for him too. Marco says Dante's different now. Less cold. More human." "Marco talks about his boss with you?" Her cheeks went pink. "We've had dinner a few times. Sophia, I know. I lectured you about dating dangerous men, but apparently I can't help myself either." She laughed. "Maybe it runs in our friendship." From the house, I heard Dante's voice calling my name. "That's my cue," I said, squeezing her hand. "Dinner next week? With guards and security checks and all the paranoia?" "Obviously. Can't wait." I found Dante in his study, papers spread across his desk, but his expression was soft. "What?" I asked. "Your foundation got approval for the second location," he said. "Brooklyn, near where you grew up." My heart swelled. "Really? Really? You'll be able to help 50 more families a year." He stood, pulling me close. "I'm proud of you. It's your money. It's your heart. Your vision. Your father's memory turned into something beautiful." He kissed my forehead. "You took all the darkness, his addiction, the danger you faced, everything, and created light. That's not money. That's you." I held him tight, breathing in his scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," I whispered. "I love you too, always." Outside, the garden bloomed with roses his mother planted and he maintained. Inside, we built a life from danger and choice and love that refused to be broken. It wasn't the safe life. It wasn't the easy life. But it was ours, thorns and petals, darkness and roses, perfectly imperfect. And I wouldn't change a single moment.